So, I've been facing this fear of like, yeah, you can't use a selfie camera. I always hated selfie cameras, hated looking at myself, especially since I've put on weight the last few years. I'm just like, no. So you get to look at trees. So I was thinking about my experiences when I was an instructor, and that's what informs my kind of view on teaching when I look at public schools as a school trustee. So, and I look back on my teaching, and I remember students who came into my classroom who would go into the student services area, get a quick assessment. And it was a funny thing for guys in the trades, guys or girls. I mean, it was predominantly men in our industry, but there was more and more women coming through the program. And so, and I got to tell you, actually, in most cases, it was the men who went to student services and got accommodations. Now, if you are going to be attending there for a 2 or 3 year course, as is my understanding, this is how it was, you had to go and get assessed. And then they're like, oh, you have ADHD? Okay, we'll give you some accommodations. Just need to go through the process, get a note from your doctor, etc. And but in the trades program, it was a 10-week course. And when they showed up, oftentimes they hadn't done the work ahead of time. They just said, listen, I have some real challenges. My teachers always accommodated me in high school, and I used to get extra time for writing, or I would get to have my book with me to look at the notes, or for spelling, or whatever. There was always sorts of things, some sort of little extra. And that's the point, actually. It was carved out as uniquely for each person. As, you know, I mean, there was a general set of rules to be followed, but, you know, it was like, you declare it, how do you learn? Okay, we're accommodating to that. We're not going to argue with you. You're only here 10 weeks. We don't have time to go through the more vetted process. So give her, you do it. And so these students came in, and I can remember one in particular I'll just use as an amalgamated example of multiple students, but it is mostly a certain person. They came in, and they said they can't focus. Their focus goes all over the place while they're watching you do your notes. And so they would like all your notes printed out ahead of time. Well, I don't have all my notes printed out ahead of time. Part of it is just that, an interactive process. I recognize the value of the interactive process so much that I was like, yes, there'll be main booklets of fundamental concepts and also fundamental concepts that I don't think the textbook covers as well. So I'll do an extra little blast of it on paper with pictures, pre-written out in a very structured format so that you can look at it if you miss something while we're in class. But one of the things you learn with learning is that you need to be reminded more often than you need to be taught. And so I would be going through the material and just tackling it from different ways. It's like just taking, go across the field this way, north to south, and then go across the field this way, east to west. And when you're done, you might have to make a third pass back in the day, and now it's good. You've accomplished, planted the seeds you wanted to plant. So it takes repetition. So part of what I'd be doing in the classroom with that presentation is the notes that the students take down. And as cynical as this is, I remember a couple of my fellow instructors saying, well, you have to speak it. You have to go through the notes on the board. So they write it down. It's probably the only time they're ever going to read it. And I thought that was overstated. And I know that there was multiple students who said, I really like that booklet. I really like that handout. Or I was going over your notes again. Or I went through the textbook and highlighted or took notes, like you said, or made little recipe flashcards or whatever it is to get the student to engage with the material that's already there. I'm just like one of those tour guides on the Hollywood sightseeing bus. Over here on our left, you'll see the different models for atomic solar, the solar model of electrons around the atoms, and the atomic model. Over here on your right, you'll see basic engineering prefixes and decimals and exponents. And coming up ahead, we'll see Ohm's law and the beginnings of starting our math. That was my job, to present these different things to them. They're already there. And, there's people who I've met who I know. It's like if you threw them in a room with the notes and the textbook and left for 10 weeks, you'd come back and they would write the test fine and they'd know more than some of the other guys because that's just how their brain works. But that's not everybody. And I found many, many students who said that the methods that I used and what I fundamentally saw was there's probably stuff I did that like, ugh, annoying, hate that guy. But the main thing I did was redirect their nose and eyes back to, look at this, look at this, look at this, let's look at it again, let's do it again, let's do another one of those questions to the board, let's talk about it, let's go to the lab and look at how it really works, let's come back and talk about, hey, remember when you saw it for real? Well, you know, that, how would you describe that? Well, those are the words we're using, we're learning how to speak electrical, right? And so I'm trying to tell this kid, you know, without saying all that long-winded explanation for a guy who just wants to get through and get a $7 an hour raise. I'm trying to tell him that, listen, I will get one of the other students who takes notes. I'll find somebody who takes good notes and underlines things well and is accurate. And then you'll get a snapshot of the notes the way they were today, because they're going to be different every time I go through. But there's this main structure of these handouts that have the main stuff. There's key things, because there's something weird about my personality. I don't get bored about saying it the 17th or 24th time, because it's not about the saying of it. It's about seeing whether you get it. And I know that if I consistently say it in a good way with this structure to it and take you down the path of, you know, walking down this path and picking these berries and smelling these roses, you know, in the electrical theory land, and try to get you to realize it's berries and roses. Like, this is some neat stuff. It's going to solve problems for you. And then getting you to the lab where you go, damn it, I hate to say it, but I just solved this problem. I just did some troubleshooting because of those 2 rules Kluge shot me, right? There you go. And I love when they acquiesce and go, you're right, math is awesome, theory is great, and practical ties it all together. So this student, you know, I told him, I said, I will get you a set of the notes, as it were, as best I can. You will have the rest of it in a formalized handout. And you do with that what you will, and please stay in touch with me as we go and make sure that that's working for you. But what I ask is that you try to take down the notes while we're in class. Try your best. I don't care if you throw them out when you're done, because to tell you the truth, that was my notes. Guys would see me. I'd write down the formula, a little bit of the math, and then the teacher would go on a side chat about capacitors in your dash speakers in your car, and why subs, guys who are putting subwoofers in their car use these kind of coils. And I'm like, oh, cool. That's neat. That's making it all make sense. And I would draw a picture of a rainbow pony riding a coil, you know, and people are like, what the hell is going on in your notes? I'm staying engaged. Every little picture I draw is about something to do with an integrated imaginary event I had while fully being in storyland with the guy presenting these notes. And what I find is that a lot of students, they're listening to the instructor and they're going, do, I hate electricity and math. Thinking about cheeseburgers. It's like, and then it comes to the end of the class and I go, so, answer this 5-question quiz. And they're like, I have no idea what's on this quiz. I'm like, well, you were thinking about cheeseburgers the whole time. I'm sorry, but you were. I mean, the funny thing is people say, how do you know? You can actually tell. I can't tell it was cheeseburgers, but I can tell that they'd floated off. I certainly can tell if they're looking under their desk because they're trying to use their phone without getting called out for being in contravention of our cell phone policy. And our cell phone policy is quite simply, please don't use them. I'm not your father, your priest, or your social worker, so I'm not going to tell you not. You just can't. That's like telling you can't go for a whiz or get a drink of water. Not happening. But I'm telling you, please don't. You should really try to pay attention to this. Listen, we only fully, hear 40% of what's being said because we float off, we think of other things, we come back. So, they're saying on average. I believe there's some people who are so good at it, they hear almost everything that's said, depending on how they focus. But yeah, if people only hear 40% of what is said, it makes perfect sense where I say you're going to have to repeat, and repeat. So I did. I repeated. And this kid got it. And he did fine. And he and I worked out a way to deal with his concerns and make sure he got what he needed. He was accommodated. I honestly think if he would have came in quietly and said nothing to me and never even gotten student services to get a hold of me, if he just went and got his extra testing time, he would have done fine because what I was going to do was pretty much what we did. But the addition of those extra notes from the other students, maybe he liked that at first, but he eventually said, don't worry about it. He said I didn't have to go photocopy them anymore. So when I think of this, one of the big takeaways beyond, there's so many things that I learned from those experiences and seeing it that way. But one of the other things that I sometimes, forget about and I have to bring myself back to is that everybody's coming at learning from a different place, right? I used to say everyone's coming from their own particular place of wrongness. It has to be. Nobody's 100% right, so everyone's got some wrongness in their model. So everyone's coming from their own particular place of wrongness. So you should, as an individual, be going, okay, what am I not seeing right here? What am I probably not? What is possible I'm not seeing right here? I don't know for sure, but maybe, just maybe, crazy as it may sound, I might not be 100% right about all of this. So what's the thing I'm seeing, or missing seeing? What's the thing I need to see? And one of the things is that everybody's seeing things from their own perspective, right? And so everyone's wrong from their own perspective, and everyone's carrying burdens from their own particular experience, and etc. And the right hates talking like that, hate hearing that it's true. There's challenges that people face that should be looked at and addressed, and sometimes accommodated if it won't hurt you to have it accommodated. Now, do we want that to leave them coming out the side less functional? Less able to actually do their job, not having the qualifications needed to keep people not just safe. We always go to safety, but what about just not paying for shit that doesn't work? Not paying for things that aren't functioning? Maybe people want that too. And so for whatever reason, we have to look at all the different ways people are seeing things and then say, this guy wants to process the information this way. I'm cool with that, as long as he and management and the province are cool with the fact that if he doesn't get through all the stuff he needs to get through in a way that makes him functional at the level apprenticeship seems to say they want people functional at, I have to be able to tell him, you didn't succeed this time, you need to tackle the stuff again. And that's a gift. Because that's a little bit like, hey, listen, for whatever reason, this burger tasted rotten, made you sick, fell apart, wasn't in the bag, got stolen, here's another burger. If you go through the course program and you don't get it for whatever reason, through a problem in how I presented it, because you're a particularly challenging student who has needs I didn't fully comprehend, okay, then you should go through it again. I know there's no way to make that right, because it sucks that you have to go through that 10 weeks of class again. And if you're having to collect EI and make less than your normal wage and you're struggling, there's whole parts of that just suck and that I'm not sure how to deal with. But I would move you up to my next level in command and say, could you maybe give them some tips on how to deal with this? Because they do sound like they're in a pickle, and I don't know how they're going to get through that. But aside from that, it still seems to me that if they didn't get what they came to get, if they went, as my nemesis used to say, if they went to the store to get milk and they didn't get milk, they come back without milk, it's like, well, you've been going back to the store. Well, you need milk. And we need you to know this material at a minimal standard. Or so I thought. I thought that was the idea. The idea of having apprenticeship outlines that delineate what the learning objectives were and what the outcomes should be. And I do my best to try to aim towards what I think they're telling me to achieve. And I have a certain degree of ambiguity in that, because although some stuff is real simple, like they better know how to do Ohm's law. It's this times this equals that. It equals volts. And that's what it equals. And so I know what to get to with that. But with some of the more abstract objectives, and in other course offerings where it is much more abstract, what are they trying to achieve? Whether it be, crisis counseling or landscaping. I mean, these may not have as concrete, they may be more wishy-washy in their objectives, but you still have to define what they are and make sure people are getting them. That's what I thought. And so if they aren't getting their objectives met, then one of the things we can do, even if it's like, it'd be so awesome if I did it right the first time. It'd be so awesome if things went perfectly the first time always. It'd be so awesome if mistakes were never made. But they happen. So then what do? Best I can do is give you an opportunity to go through it again. But there's been a new trend. It's not best I can do is give you the opportunity to go through it again. I mean, we may even be able to say, you get to go through it again, and we'll give you a break on the cost of it, because we know that it could be somewhat our fault. It may be your fault, but it may be our fault. That's a possibility. And in a non-blame culture, we'd go, let's just help them out, get through this a second time, right? Or help her out, get through this a second time, or help they out, and we'll get through this a second time. And we'll get through it and learn from the mistake, and we won't point fingers out, was it your fault? Was it your fault? Because the truth of the matter is, oftentimes one with more power can leverage it into, see, I told you it was your fault, not my fault. And that doesn't help, because sometimes there really is, no matter how thin the pancake, it always has two sides. And there may be something to, oops, the school, the management, the teacher, they screwed something up and exacerbated a problem and made it more difficult for the student to get through. Just help them out. Help them out. Get them through. Oh, you mean like cheat them through? No, I'm not talking that one. Yeah, I know. I should clarify. There is that one too. The other solution that people go with is, listen, that sucks that this student got totally robbed. Well, no, they didn't do anything. Like, they didn't write down the notes. They didn't try the homework. They were all over the place in the classroom. They wouldn't answer questions when it was time for questions. They asked questions right over somebody else's question. When somebody else's question was in the middle being answered, they'd push into the front, like pushing into the front of a food line, like an 8-year-old kid just knocking the other two kids out of the way and spilling their trays. Literally that level of obtuse, what's the word I'm looking? Like elbowing in front of the other two students, metaphorically, and going, what happened there with that number times that number? What did you just do there? And two other guys are looking like, hello? What's that guy doing? And I'm going, I'm really sorry that I didn't control that, but as well as I would have in a normal group. But I had gotten so shaky that I was like, I don't know if I'm allowed to stop a student, because it might hurt their feelings. It might hurt their sense of self and student-directed learning that they want to achieve right now. And right now, what they want is their answer to their question, no matter what is happening in the classroom right now, the moment they thought of it, with no delayed gratification, and cut off two other guys. And then when I say, just a second, first off, the question you just asked, and this is going to be so embarrassing, but the question you just asked is the one I am currently answering for some other student who asked it 30 seconds before you did. We're partway through it, and I'm sure you zoned out and were thinking of cheeseburgers, and that's okay. I do it too. I'm kind of ADHD or ADD. I'm not sure which some days, but I get it, but you can't. You got to wait, son. You got to hang back for a second and just cool your jets. And when you come back out of that fog, go, okay, what was just happening? What's he talking about now? Oh, he's talking about 5 amps times 12 ohms. Oh, I get it. 60 volts. That's a strange voltage. Okay, good. You're back with us now. Now you realize you don't need to ask the questions being answered right now. Or now you realize, I zoned out. I'm going to have to do that embarrassing thing of saying, could you answer that part at the start again? And if you own that, believe it or not, I'm not the type of guy to throw you under the bus for asking because you zoned out. Because I zone out all the time myself. But the problem is that they had this duality of, I zone out, plus I'm really obstinate if you point it out, or even make me acknowledge it myself. That's the second part, is actually the bigger one. Because I actually would see it and kind of just go, oh, he's not even getting that he just elbowed two guys out of the way to get his answer answered. And he doesn't realize it's being answered right now. And I am so sorry that in that moment I said, buddy, I'm answering the question you're asking right now, but you just interrupted those two guys in order to ask me to answer it. Was that rude of me? Actually, there's two ways of thinking of that. There's a whole bunch of my more toxic masculine counterparts who aren't really toxically masculine. They're just trying to give those guys the tough love of, hey, you dozy bastard, wake up. And I'm like, guys, we really shouldn't call him a dozy bastard. And the guy's like, yeah, well, he's a dumb, etc. And I'm like, doesn't matter. Everyone's walking a tough road and you don't know what he's going through, but, a little bit of the stuff on the left is actually right. It's like, give the guy a break. Give him some time to catch up. But the other side is you do have to administer a little bit of that, hey, man, you've got to try to bring yourself into focus. And I know you're going to say that, all the reasons why I might not understand it and that I can't judge you. I'm not. But I keep looking down on your phone. It's like you get distracted by your phone and then you go look at it and then you come back and then you go, excuse me, I'm not understanding what you're talking about there. Which, fair enough. Maybe your girlfriend's pregnant and you had to look at that text. But all I'm saying is that you're doing 17 things wrong and I'm not allowed to tell you that. There's all these reasons why I'm not allowed to say, listen, man, like I'm as soft and gentle as the next guy, and a lot more than some. But you're doing all sorts of things that are hurting your own progress forward. And I'm okay with giving you even more latitude for why is that happening, and let's just figure out how to solve it, and you can keep moving forward and learning this stuff. But there's a certain collection of traits and a certain collection of it's not even a learning style. I hate when people start going, well, he has a certain learning style. No, the learning style's over here if it's a thing, and then over here though is called a rude, obnoxious jerk in the classroom. It's like it's getting to that level. The weird thing is it hasn't been challenged enough. So on a level, sometimes some of them are not even doing it to be a dick. They're that obtuse, they're that tuned out that when the other guys in the classroom do that looking around wild look of like, what the heck? Did you see how that guy just cut me off? You know? And they don't realize it. You ever seen somebody like that? Somebody driving and they just tune over in front of you from a merge lane, and they come so close to you and you hammer on the brakes and you're like, what the heck just happened? And then you realize they didn't know you were there. I'm not saying that's okay. It bugs me too, but I am wondering sometimes, how do you get to a place where you actually don't even notice that person's in front of you, right? And so, how do you balance that out between the guys who say, slap him in the head is what you do? There is a time, if somebody keeps putting rakes out on the lawn face up, because, and then, the next morning run out of their house and step all over them, then sure, Oh, and by the way, something has happened in the last 2 or 3 years. I don't know if anybody else is noticing it. Pocket gophers. They're all over the place. I can't believe. Now, I tried to be at first, when it's out here in the old pasture, I tried to just say, hey, it's an opportunity to have soil brought from down below and thrown up on top. It's like free, cultivating from our friends, the pocket gophers. And sometimes the really big mounds are marmots, what do they call those, groundhogs. But, for the most part, when they start showing up now in my lawn, in my proper yard, in the fenced area that I try to keep mowed, and you get these literally sometimes 18-inch high. These are small ones. There's ones that are 4, 5, 10 times the size of these. 10 times the size of those, honest. Anyways, I digress on gopher mounds. But I could tell you about how people on the right sometimes want to give a tougher love and say, listen, how are we going to wake these people up? And there is a place for tough love. People have to acknowledge that. I remember when one of my kids got very sick. They were in the hospital for 3 nights, maybe 4 nights. And the antibiotics that got their infection in check, it was just so, scary to see them get that limp and faded and in a matter of like less than 2 days. It's like the day before you're going, I wonder if we should take him in, and you check his temperature, and then the next day you're like, holy shit, we better take him in. And so how scary it was to see it go there, but then to give him antibiotics in his IV, and it's like a couple days later we're going home, right? And it's like, yeah, here's this bottle of stuff. You just got to give this a squirt of it down his throat twice a day, and once in the morning, once at night. I'm like, wow, what a blessing. I live in Canada. My kid gets assessed, filled up with fluids from IV, and sent home all under 4 days, right? Maybe 5 days. And all you got to do is keep giving them this medicine. They're going to be fine. I'm like, okay, sure, yeah, that's really important. So my wife, I come home, she's doing it, and I see the kids pushing away, and she's crying, and my wife's got this thing in her, which I understand. It's like, oh, it's so hard to give him this medicine because he's pushing my hands away and he's crying. And I'm like, yeah, honey, he's got to take that medicine. And I'm like, I'll do it. I'm doing this next week of medicine here because the reality is that between the husband and the wife, the mother and the father, if one of us has to be seen as the hard ass who did stuff dad that the kid didn't like, I don't want it to be the mom. I want them to think of mom as that person who gives them a hug when they scrape their knee. So I'm like, I'll do it. And I had to hold that kid And the nicest thing to do was to be the toughest, not to kind of hold them and kind of hug them. Right now it was, I got to put your favorite blanket around you, tight around your arm so you can't fight me, and I have to put this stuff straight down your throat, and you'll give one cough, and you might cry a little bit afterwards, and it's over. Because I saw what happened when you didn't have this, so I'm sorry, you need this medicine. Now, I got to make that choice with my kid, but when people come into the classroom, it was like, listen, this kid, he got a lot of bad habits that it really looks to me like a whole bunch of people in the public school system said, you go on, you keep up with those bad habits. I'm not your father. I'm not your priest. I'm not your mother. I'm not your social worker. And that's not saying that all teachers are like that. Lots of them, they're really good-hearted people who are trying to do their best in their job. I believe that, and I'm really here to defend you. I'm not your enemy, but there's moments when the best thing you can do to a person is give them that medicine they don't want, and to try to do it as kindly as possible. And sometimes as kindly as possible is to do it very firmly, down the hatch. It's over, done. Okay, you're good now. Take the blanket off. Yeah, okay, you want to keep holding the blanket? That's fine. And then be thankful that you're getting better, even if you don't understand it right now, that the medicine I was giving you was to keep you safe, right? Well, I tried to, when I was an electrical instructor, show students about, safety rules and why you do them and why you always do this before you turn equipment on so it doesn't blow up in your face. And then show them relevant videos. There's a place for educational videos, and I'd show them relevant videos and then try to draw the connection between not just here's something to scare you, but what could you do to make sure this doesn't happen in the future? And then I made my students follow these rules all through their labs. And I hate to say, there was a couple other guys I saw occasionally do it or talk about it with the students, but I said, no, you're going to do it. You learn by practicing. You are going to do all proper protocols for safe turning off and on of equipment so it doesn't blow up in your face. And I made it part of the program, and it became something that even the students laughed about. They'd catch another student, hey, you didn't follow the 4 steps, Mr. Kluche, but laughing and in a joking way. And the next thing you know, everyone's doing it, right? And that was, you got to do this because it's going to keep you safe, right? And when I saw stuff that wasn't safe, I took it. I thought the more I did it, the more it was like, this is cool. I like doing things right. This was a little bit of right. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be humble about that. It's not about humble. It's like, this should be practice. These are the rules. This is supporting in a very real way the policies, process, theory, best practice, quizzes that we test on safety, all this stuff. It's all in alignment with what we're supposed to let them know at the end of this whole road. And so I say, hey guys, this is how we're doing it. And that worked. And when I started to do that and realized, but there's so many guys who aren't bothering to do it, what causes that culture where guys go, whatever? What causes a lack of safety culture at the premier institution in the province, the place that should be at the lead, out in the forefront of teaching everyone how to do things as close to properly as we can surmise. And how do we do that? Well, we have discussions about what is properly and what are the key things we have to accomplish. And do we want to, cut corners on this or that aspect of our safety program for some valid reason? I really can't think of one, but if somebody gave me an argument and said, here's why we don't do this or that, here's why it's not effectual, here's why we don't think it's necessary. Okay, that would be strange. I can't envision any sort of model that would answer all the questions I raised in any way sufficiently. But okay, maybe. Tell me what it is. Crickets. I can't hear anybody. What's going on? Nobody wants to tell me what it is. So I was pretty sure that my little bit of safety program and my little protocols and teachable moments tied together with the regular curriculum and crossing over into curriculum from other previous courses. And guys are like, stay in your lane. You're teaching DC motors right now. Why are you throwing that motor control stuff in there? Well, they're clearly tied together. Yeah, stay in your lane. You're teaching controls right now. Why are you going into the safety? They have a little course they do for safety in level 1. Don't worry about it. And they see a kid who went into ductwork and got all burnt up. It's very traumatic. Don't worry, it's covered. That's one part of it. Although how that course was sometimes presented, I heard many students who said, what a joke. And then I heard students who said, wow, that was really impactful. So it could be both. But there's no way anybody could describe to me the notion that, or some way prove to me the idea that tying previously learned material from other levels back in and cycling through it again a little bit as you refresh yourself on new material, there's no way somebody can tell me how that's not the way to do it. But the weird thing is nobody did. Those dialogues didn't happen. All that really happened was people said, this guy keeps raising weird things and he's annoying. Can we get rid of him so it wasn't annoying anymore? The annoyance would be less if he was not around, right? Yeah, but what's he saying? Don't care. Did I mention annoying? Yeah, we need him gone. This is really annoying. All the stuff, that he's saying. Right, annoying. What was he saying? Doesn't really matter. Well, shouldn't you be able to describe what he's saying so that you can defend your position as to why you think he needs to be shut down? No, don't really want to do it that way. It's a lot like work, and I'd have to think about his position. I haven't really yet. But I'm seeing a way we can get from point A over to point B. We can get through this without, actually having to address any of his concerns directly. Oh, that's clever. How do you do that? I'll tell you later.